I'm Michaela, and
I'm Philip.
And so we actually want to just preface this by saying there was actually a little mishap with the event schedule. So this panel was supposed to take place tomorrow. So they accidentally switched the titles of the panels. But that's okay because we're just gonna have like a little round table here as well. And then you can also catch us tomorrow, and there will be a different group of panelists for that as well. So we'll be on tomorrow at 2:30. But today, actually wanted to invite anyone to come up on the stage as well and be a part of this conversation because we're just really going into depth about your experiences if you are a writer or artist or creator, and just how you've navigated being a Black creator, or even if you're not, that's okay. Like, it's just good to have these conversations amongst each other. So if there's any volunteers that like to come up and be a part of this conversation, we really appreciate it because there's actually supposed to be more panelists for this this setup. So yeah, so the topics. Okay, so yeah, it's a great segue. So basically the topics are going to be inspiration, like what media, literature, movies, and shows did you watch maybe growing up that inspired you to become a writer, artist, or creator, and what would you have liked to see? Like growing up, what character would you have liked to see? And also like what characters did you resonate with on like a personal level that you're like, oh, that's me, like that's exactly how I would act or handle that situation. And then next will be crafting characters. So that's just all about character creation, your intentionality with your choices that you make, because you have to be very intentional as a writer with the message that you're trying to send and convey. So just, this is really just about an insight onto what makes you make those decisions for your characters and what message are you trying to convey. And that sort of leads into the escapism aspect as well. I feel like a lot of us turn to media for an escape, or like, just escape, because definitely with sci-fi and fantasy, it's like, out of this world. It's like stuff you could never experience, but you're able to go on this journey. So when it comes to your own personal stories that you may be working on, did you take more of a like dystopian approach with it, or did you take more of a utopian approach? And is it like a better version of our reality or like a worse version? And why did you do that? Because a lot of times, at least for how Black people are portrayed in the media, it seems like we're always struggling. Like, like it just kind of seemed like a lot of times our characters just have to be in some sort of struggle situation. So did you want your media to reflect more of that, or did you want to reflect more of a positive outlook? So that one's a little bit more deep with the escapism aspect. We don't have to get like too deep into it today, but yeah, that's kind of ending on a note that's a little bit more meaningful and serious, and then we move to Q&A. So that's just question and answer, obviously, just any questions that you may have, and we just can continue the conversation from there. So yeah, with that being said, if there are any volunteers that would like to come up, I know it's like there's no preparation like for all these questions.
Yeah.
Hmm?
All right.
You want to come? Okay, cool. Yeah, anywhere. We have some chairs. And we will be posting this on YouTube as well. Okay, well, if there isn't anyone else, then we can get started. So we introduce ourselves, so we'll start with you. If you can introduce yourself and what you do.
My name is Andres Dominguez Cuevas. I go by Andy.
Okay.
I am a SCAD graduate in sequential art.
Oh.
Wasn't chosen. I kind of got shoehorned into the comic book thing, but I do enjoy it, and I've kind of been doing it since. Yeah.
Cool.
Mini introduction.
Cool.
I'll speak in this one. Cliff, Clifton Holiday, go by Cliff. I am a writer, been writing comics, been an aspiring writer since I was probably 13 years old. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome that you're doing it now, and your 13-year-old self be proud of you, I'm sure. So, yeah, inspiration. So, like I said, this is really where it starts, you know, when you're young, like those characters that really resonate with you. So like, what were your favorite media and shows that inspired you? And what would you have liked to see yourself in maybe growing up? And for you too, Philip. Yeah, you can.
So as a kid, I would stay up really late, like towards like 3 or 4 a.m. just because they would always play the reruns of Fooly Cooly. And there's something about the soft pastel color that went along with the animation that was just so fluid. I really loved that series. That was probably my biggest inspiration for art. As far as like live media, probably Chronicles of Riddick, specifically Pitch Black. Like that was my all-time favorite movie for the longest. Like I loved Riddick. I love dark art. I do a lot of monsters, but as far as like style-wise, there's something about like the very aggressive, scratchy, like. Have you guys ever played like Street Fighter 6? Five, where like there's like those kind of inky black outlines, or if you look at like the original box art for like Mario Strikers, like they had that kind of scratchy tone. Like I love that kind of style and look. So I always try to capture that while also pulling in like the Fooly Cooly Aeon Flux style, while also trying to keep my art dark, and it ends up kind of looking like a mixed mash of everything. That's dope. But that's kind of where I get my inspiration from.
That's dope. I would love to see your art, by the way, too, when we finish.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. You don't do it now.
I guess we're gonna
Yeah.
All right. So, hi, my name is Philip. You know, my biggest inspiration, you know, as a kid since I was like 10, you know, my dad had a stack of comic books from like the 80s, Jim Valentino, like those kind of artists, Silver Surfer, Thor, comics. I grew up reading. And it really inspired me to kind of get into art and draw different types of characters. And the later I got into my drawing phases, I kind of more so geared toward anime. Fullmetal Alchemist. One of my biggest inspirations currently is Jujutsu Kaisen. It ties in.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is like the fact you said sketchy style, and that's kind of something similar to what I do. Because Jujutsu Kaisen also has sort of if you read the manga, it has a really nice, sketchy, kind of full of energy, and I like that kind of style. It just brings some type of energy to the characters and brings some type of life to it. I love very grungy, very kind of dark aesthetics. And like demons and stuff like that, so it's just really fun, and that's definitely where my inspiration kind of lied in, I guess.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, for me, I was like obsessed with fairies for the longest time, like and elves and like different like supernatural creatures. So I like really loved Winx Club, like growing up, like that was it. Yeah, that was like it for me. Like Aisha / Layla, like I don't even get why they changed her character like that, but yeah, just Winx Club was really big for me because it was like an escape, and like I would like fight like with my friends over who got to be my favorite character, and like so Also, the Tinkerbell movies I loved so much just because of like that escape. Like I just want to go to a different world. Like, so those were my favorites. But like as I got older, I also really like Teen Titans a lot. Like, yeah, you know, yeah, I love Starfire. I think I like actually thought I was her in high school. Like people said I acted like her, and I was like, yeah, I was like, I don't know, like, but I was actually really trying to be her. But yeah, but what about you?
Me, I might be showing my age, but I remember going to go see Spider-Man back when it came out in like 2001. I remember thinking, oh my God, this is the best movie I've ever seen in my freaking life. I gotta, like, it's just amazing. I started collecting a bunch of comic books. So I was the basic standard, everyone going to go, that was my opening. I started getting more into like the darker stuff, honestly, when I was like in 5th grade. Someone showed me Punisher when I was younger, and I oddly enough started reading. I read Oedipus Rex probably a little bit too young, and the entire franchise. So it was like from Oedipus Rex to Medea to Antigone. I love the darker, more grounded, more tragic side of of fiction, because it felt more honest to me. And from that, I write mostly noir, detective noir comics. They spoke to me the most. It's oddly kind of beautiful if you kind of really think about it, how, a protagonist, probably not that good of a person, but at the end of the day, might even lose, still tries. And that's honestly a best way to kind of think of the reality we're in today. Like, you do as much good as you want. The world probably ain't gonna change, but it's nice to just try.
Yeah, I think there's like definitely some juxtaposition with like my favorites growing up and you guys.
Despair.
I'm sorry, you have a question?
I don't know, it's kind of late, but can I go?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
Obviously. But yeah, no, I completely understand what you're saying. I also I've been starting writing my own manga, comic, and that idea of this more gritty side to the world, and this, just a lot of death and violence, and it reflects life. But I try to make a positive, and I like when writing a protagonist. I love protagonists that aren't perfect,
right,
and they struggle, and they're not even the strongest. They don't at the end of this show become the most OP. No, they just barely survive and make it out, but do their objective. And I think that resonates with a lot of people because it's real.
Right. And I don't mean to write it as like, woe with me. It's supposed to be like a super tragic, depressing ending. The silver lining is always someone's trying.
Right.
Again, they might die, they might lose, they might fall into the gutter somewhere. It doesn't matter. They try, and that's what you're supposed to take out of it.
Right. That's a good point. If you want to, by the way, you can introduce yourself. And
My name is Tyson Baker. I'm currently a student at GSU.
Nice.
I got my inspiration from a lot of cartoons, comics, anime. If you were to see my art, it's kind of like a mixture of all those. I really like Adventure Time. That's my favorite. A little cartoony style. But growing up, I was as you guys were talking about earlier, Black characters in the media. We try to find those characters that relate to us.
Right.
Those hey, that could be me up on there. And I noticed how you said we're always struggling. There's always something wrong with our characters, right? I know, for example, we're always stuck with the one-liners type of thing.
Right.
When I was growing up, I'm like, when can I see something different? So
they're like one-dimensional characters.
Right,
That's just
exactly.
the comedic relief or something like that. Yeah.
Creators and producers of shows try to make it seem so hard to write characters, especially those of different color or different cultures. I mean, it's really simple.
Well, to be fair, I mean, a lot of writers back in the day, especially me being a 90s kid, a lot of those writers were white and they didn't really know how to write for Black characters, So
that's true.
Yeah, something with that, it's really just kind of simple. You write a character, but you don't really say anything about their race. It could be of any color.
Right. It can't be.
Why not make a TV show? Imagine Adventure Time, but just imagine Finn was just a different skin tone. It'd still be the same. Everybody would still love the character. It's just a different skin tone.
Oh no, I agree with
Yeah.
you. I agree with you. I'm thinking more in the lines of God, what was the name of the show? I believe it was the Cosby. No, it was Family Matters. I was thinking more like Family Matters. That was written predominantly by a white writer's room. Hence why they didn't really know how to write a black family. Hence why they added in Steve Urkel so they can make it a little bit more the way audience. But yeah,
I get you. Yeah, definitely. My main inspiration was trying to make that change. You know, like so that everybody has someone they can look up to.
right.
You know, because that really uplifts us. Uplifts us. I feel like.
For sure, yeah.
You want to just add?
Just regarding the note on like how it's like predominantly white writers, I think one fix for that is not trying to appease like standard, not even black stereotypes, but like taste profiles, aiming towards like the small subtleties that make a person, like just kind of like reference habits or actions that people do, like they listen to certain kind of music, or they tap their foot, or snapping, or like those kind of like small like human characteristics kind of build character profile outside of just saying, yes, they have black hair and also brown eyes. Why didn't like you could say that like if you're describing them, but as far as like what makes them it's gonna be those key small things.
Like the nuances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think writing a black character, you know, I think it's not like you said, it's not really difficult, and maybe again, to be fair, I'm black myself, so it's not that hard. But you know, I mean, I don't think it's hard. I mean, because black people, there's so many diaspora of black people and cultures. There's different subcultures within black culture in general. I mean, black people from New York talk different things or act differently, like different things than black people from Atlanta or California. There's black people in Idaho, Utah. You know, like there's different types of black people, and there's such a diverse cast that there is no one way to write a black person.
I can agree with you on that aspect. What I'm talking about more along lines of like, say for instance, there's a show or a comic or anything related to like female issues or things that females go through. I'm expecting a female writer to take it over that because they know what it's up. They know what's going on. I feel like it depends on the issue itself. Like I think we all kind of agree that we're the newest generation where we can actually start talking about our emotions. We can actually start talking about the traumas that we personally, our families, the old heads, I think we all kind of have that one, probably more in our family, don't talk.
About mental illness. Mental illness.
So that's universal. That's cultural. That's something that we probably, a lot of black people in the United States understand. So I'm expecting more of black writers to kind of write that. So it depends on that. If this is just a story that has nothing to do with race, it's just, people going point A, point B, then absolutely. Anyone can write that. Anyone. I'm just talking about specific issues. If you're talking about specific issues within a black family or something that we can all relate to, then that's some guy.
No, 100%. I'm gonna start with you, man, right here, and I'll get to you.
I feel like I really enjoy this conversation. I wanted to originally do like lit studies and kind of do like analysis. I ended up going into psychology and looking at like human people, real people, because they're just so much more messier. And I was like, I want to analyze the writers. So this is fun. But I feel like it's so. Like as a kid, I really always wanted to see myself in different forms of media. So to bring up a controversial topic, Harry Potter, right? I loved Hermione because I was the little black nerdy kid in the back of the room with the frizzy hair. And yes, I had frizzy hair. It's not for me, Hermione was black because I was the person in the back with the nerdy one, and my friend was like, let's go do some bullshit. And I was like, no, let's read a book. So I feel like in those situations, I had to kind of force myself into media. And then I remember watching Lilo and Stitch as a kid, and I wasn't black. I was like nothing related to them. And then to find out the majority of the writers for that was Disney, they were white, but like they talked to Hawaiian people. Like they didn't just like do a thing. they went to Hawaii, they understood the different classes. So like when you watch them dance and like those few scenes, they went to professionals and they have those conversations. Like, why are they doing this? What are they doing? Like, when would it be appropriate for Lilo to show up as a mess, dripping wet, and not interrupt the dance and make it offensive? And I feel like these types of conversations are helpful for that. So that when we do have a white writer, a Vietnamese writer, you know, a Pacific Islander writer, talking about something that doesn't necessarily relate to them culturally, they don't have any clue about their background, but it's a story, something that they have a friend that they want to discuss, that they feel comfortable enough to go to that person and have that conversation. Because I mean, I just didn't like very matters. Okay, it's just the hell out of you.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
But like, that had nothing to do with him. He could have been any color in the sun. I was just like, boy. But I feel like there's so many opportunities, especially now with the technology that we have, to understand different people's cultures. And I think that like we also as a community have been persecuted. Like we don't even have to explain that. But I feel it's so much more difficult, I think, to feel like somebody's not targeting you when they ask those questions, and to kind of have to explain things to people, like that can be so hard. So I feel like as a community, I'm really protective of our stories. Like I feel like, oh, you're not us, but you wrote about us. So I think as a writer who's not from any culture, to be able to like cite your sources, to be like, no, I had those conversations with people. Like I want to talk about it. I think it's important. And also like, I don't know if y'all have heard that old sound on TikTok. It's like, oh, it sounds better coming from you than it does from me. Like I feel like as a Black woman, I can talk about a Black woman experience. But like if my dad talks about a Black woman experience, all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of people who are like, oh my God, you're right. Like I then said it, but I look like this, so you're not gonna hear it from me. So I just feel like I touch on a lot of stuff that's ADHD, but like I think these conversations are important. I think that it's so helpful to be able to see ourselves in media and to kind of force other people to see like this is important and you need to do your fucking research, because I don't want to be the one-liner. I don't want to have to find a Hermione character to fit myself into. But like also, you're not from here. Like you don't get it. You don't know what it's like. So you need to step up and you need to do your research. And so I think in the past, previously, I've kind of like let that slide. But at the point now that we have the technology, you can reach out to people. I feel like it's important to kind of force other writers to do that stuff, to do their research, to talk to our communities, to get involved, because you don't have the excuse now of like, oh, well, I just didn't put them in there because I didn't know. Really? How could you not?
That's what I like about this time we're in right now, because as you were saying, that research, that's a requirement now. Like that's not something that you just get away with, because people will call you out real quick and say, I have no idea what the hell you were talking about. Right, I agree.
It's clear. You can see
It's very clear when someone writes about something they don't really know about, because it's very shallow.
Oh,
Hello.
hey.
Hey everyone. Dion. So I'm West African. Grew up there until I was 13, 15. So I actually have something for all of you that hopefully you guys will enjoy. It's called Samba Ilu. Samba, S-A-M-B-A, A-E-T, and look, L-E-U-K. That is what I saw growing up. And it's the story about an African kid who is tasked with dealing with the deity, an African deity who's gone broke, and is upsetting the entire ecosystem. So I got to see that, you feel me? And that makes me feel a little privileged now, you know, because I got to have that. Y'all didn't, you know? Feel a little bit like it's unfair to y'all. So I want to share that with y'all. Somebody, look, you can find it on YouTube. You can watch the entire thing. You know, you can watch it all in one sitting. I had to wait for like, what, 6 months?
I love that. I'm sorry, I love that. Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I had 6 months of watching, and I'm telling you, growing up as a kid in Ivory Coast is where I'm from. We had like two TV channels back at the time, like 1995, 1996, and only that cartoon came out every like weekday night, you know? So like after I did my homework, that's the thing I got to watch, you know? And again, we're talking about inspiration. Hopefully that will give y'all maybe some more inspiration for what you got going on right now. You know, because it's an example, an illustration of someone who looks like you. You know, someone who has a tribe. You know, that hopefully you maybe one day like do the DNA thing you can find. You know, and you can write stories. You know, based on that culture and their needs, and you know, make that the new generation's hopefully inspiration. You know, and that is it. I just wanted to share that for everyone, and that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. It's small.
I just wanted to say that as an older blurred, coming through how I was raised, and seeing this is one of the most beautiful things in the world. Because where I came from, there was no inclusivity, there was no creativity as far as black characters. It was a literal desert of trying to find somebody that looked like me, whether they were a hero or a villain. And when you did find them, they were so stereotyped, you didn't even want to bother to read up about them. But that's all we had. And as I've been growing up, I'm a comic fan, been a comic fan all my life. Like I said, I've been comic books since I was 9, I'm 53. My kids are just like myself. I'm into anime and everything. But I wanted to see someone that looked like me create a character or a story or a universe about people like me. And where we at right now, we have a generation. All of this creativity right here. And from the bottom of this whole blessed heart, I want to say thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you for saying that. Like I love that. Because yeah, we are more privileged in that we do have more representation than ever before. Arguably, I feel like the 90s was kind of like a whole renaissance. Like I feel like we had a lot of representation in the 90s.
I was definitely. I mean, I'm not going to here assume anyone's age here. I mean, I'm real. The 90s was. It definitely still had some issues, especially when it came to black protagonists, especially when it comes to film or television or anything like that. It had to do, as we were talking about earlier, how it's like anyone could how about the stories that anyone can write? Just protagonists just have to be black. There wasn't really much in that. If there was, it was something that it was someone. The star of it used to be someone that was quote unquote he was called white famous, like Wesley Snipes, Will Smith. Think of anyone that's universally loved around the world who can make a bunch of money. That's who they were focused on. But anything else that really rocked the boat, like Black Panther, no, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot
at
about
all. In fact, I could be wrong from what I hear. Back when the MCU first even got started, the idea of having diverse superheroes, the person who had the helm at the time before Feige did not want that. Like, they did not want it's not remote, just keep it. I mean, you kind of noticed for phase 1, it was pretty cookie cutter white.
that's true.
So the 90s, the 90s still had its issues. It definitely did. I would definitely argue and say it was probably the mid 2000s that it really started to hit. Yeah. I mean, we had Blade, but Blade, people didn't see that as a superhero movie. They saw that more of a horror movie or vampire movie starring Wesley Snipes.
I think definitely now it is. It's a lot because of access to being able to tell your story throughout, by yourself. Because again, with the advantages of the internet, you can be like, well, I don't see it, bump it. I'm gonna make my own story, and you can upload it for free somewhere else or write it somewhere, and then you create your own following against it. And I think that's something that, as a writer. In general, and especially as a black writer, is something that's important in the growth that we are seeing in this, and also seeing it then persist outward into the society as a whole. So it starts off smaller and smaller groups, and then people say, "Oh, this is actually good," and then it goes
Right.
higher than that.
And I think that's why I feel like a lot of people, well, I'm pretty sure a lot of us know like how much Black Panther meant. A lot of us, that opened the floodgates. That really did. Like, how many Black superhero movies did we see before that? And how many are we seeing them now? That opened the floodgates. Probably because Hollywood, I would say racist is even more on the lines of they see where the money's coming from, and they say, "Oh, okay." That opened it up. We could do more, Black stories, and people aren't going to be weirded out about it. This is a new era, a new time. That's why I love this new generation that's coming through, because it's more like, I don't know if you guys watch the show Atlanta or something like that. It's not something that could not be made in the 90s at all.
Okay. Well, so I guess moving along, so for you guys and your personal stories that you may be developing, when you're developing your characters, what were some key things, or like, I guess I could say like tropes that you wanted to include or avoid? Because, like what I was saying earlier about the intentionality that you have, like, what did you intentionally want your character to be seen as or portrayed as? And that's anyone.
All right. So my style of character, I guess for the one, I'd say predominantly Black comic I have made or started, my main goal was just to capture the person. The main character is Tyler, the Creator. And the reason I picked him is because I really resonated with his Goblin album. And there's something about him that it's like, he's Black, but it's not his only defining factor. Like, he has all these other different pieces about him that make him a whole. And I relate to that just because, I mean, you heard my name. It's clearly not a Black name. But as a Black Hispanic man, who, even on paperwork, you can't really fill in unless you're other, it's cool to see someone you can relate to, because they can't relate to anybody else as well in some facets. And so I wanted to capture him. And so the way I went about, I guess, making his character is I just listened to his music, and I watched like bits and pieces of Loiter Squad, and I saw just how outrageous he was. I just kind of mimicked his dialogue and his, I guess, faces. Like, I have an entire reference folder of just his face. So I took a very literal approach to it, because I myself don't have much of a background in that, I guess, aspect. But I definitely do want to explore a little bit more about figuring out how to write characters better as far as being diverse. Because all I can write from right now is my own experiences, and mine are very outside of everyone.
I mean, I'm developing 2 series. I have Hunches of the Swords, and then
Be a little bit louder.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is my mic out?
Is it?
Sorry, is my? No.
You can hear
All the mics. We're just talking.
I've been developing a series, Hunter of the Seven Swords, and organically grown. And I mean, Hunter of the Seven Swords, my main character isn't necessarily Black. I do have a very big cast of diverse Black characters that I like to focus on a lot. And I think one of the biggest things, it was really just kind of me growing up. I don't have a, I guess, Black accent, whatever that means even. I never really had an accent, never really talked a certain way, never really acted how people expected me to act for being Black. I kind of more so took it from the stance of my own personal experiences also, and just being, how do I explain it? I guess it would be more so of, I would write a character, I want them to, like I said, I want them to struggle and to understand that struggle, the struggle of being Black, but just also more of nuances of my own personal experiences. My mom being from Ohio, my dad being from Brunswick, there's certain sayings that we would say to each other, certain ways that we would talk to each other, and I write that in the dialogue sometimes, something almost verbatim, like my dad would call me a sweat hog, and and it's pretty self-explanatory. But you know, like you smell like a swag, and so I write that in the dialogue, and it's just a personal experience that I've had, and it's nice to kind of use that as a base for a lot of different characters that I have, as well as using inspiration from my friends, my family, people I just meet and randomly meet. And like, that's, you know, you have a cool personality, I'm gonna write that. And, you know, I think just grabbing from different people, different experiences, good or bad, taking that and writing it, putting it in a character, and making sure that they have a balance of positive traits and also negative traits in order to make them more balanced and realistic person.
Yeah, I like what you said about like drawing from your real life experiences, because that's really mostly what you draw from, even like if it's subconsciously, but you are drawing from your own life experience. And also I think that's cool when you can write like only the little things that only you understand, or like the little things, you just put stuff in there that like if somebody else understands, you'd be like, what? Like, you'd be surprised. Right. But there's probably some person out there yeah, that would get it. But for me, my series is called Talentia, City of AI. So it's like a cyberpunk, like sci-fantasy dystopian type series, like surprisingly, I guess. But my characters exist in this world, and it's more of a high fantasy, so the races are like human and elves, and then there's like an android race. So it's not like, you know, like black, white, or like it's not like that. It's more so I'm gonna be prejudiced against you because you're a different species or whatever. Which is like, that does reflect like society, and like, you know, some people out there still do think you're a different species. Like some people are really that far back still. But, you know, just showing that dynamic, and it's escapism, but at the same time, it is also like that kind of harsh reality. But I think that you should have a good balance. Like there should be a kind of like fantastic element to your story, but then there should also be like a really like grim and dark place that you can go. I think that's like the best balance to have. So yeah, so my characters, I just wrote them, and then I was like, okay, I visualized them as this. It didn't really have to do with race. I kind of just did what you guys were saying, like where you write a character and then you just happen to choose like what they look like, and they may resemble a certain race or whatever. But yeah, so that was my approach. I really want to be like more personality driven than like physical appearance or anything like that. So yeah, that was mine. Did you have a story that you were working on?
No,
I couldn't remember.
Oh,
okay.
I do a lot of character design.
Okay.
It's like how they look, you know, whatever race, you know, give them a cool fit. But if I were to pick a story, or if I were to make a story, it would be more of a, you know, they just so happen to be that way. But it would also be wrong to ignore the problems and like just keep going on. Maybe like touch on an episode or two, whatever. But yeah, definitely, like you said earlier, do your research and everything. You know, find out where these backgrounds are coming from, so people recognize that, oh, they know what they're talking about. They know what issues that we're going through. And yeah, whenever I get to that point, that's really the goal.
Like an example, I don't think you have to talk about it. I think it just becomes a part of their world, because that's the kind of person and people they are. Like, you're going to touch on those issues regardless, because whether it's a person or a creature or whatever world you're building, they're going to have issues. Like, otherwise you're going to be very, very boring characters. Like, you're going to build them based on from the outfit to the faces they make. Like, they're going to have issues. So you're going to make that. You never should feel forced that you have to include that. Like, once you start making those characters, it'll build upon that.
Like I said earlier, like I was always big into like the noir and the like Greek tragedies and Shakespearean tragedies. It was always about catharsis, expressing all sense of emotion. And I, again, especially me growing up in that certain time. It's a lot of, I grew up in that Black family where, you know, it was hard to talk about your emotions. So it's like watching that stuff or reading any of those comics back in the day, it's like, I wish there was a Black, you know, protagonist who can deal with that stuff, who can talk about that stuff. It wouldn't be the angry Black man, it would be the, you know, crazy Black woman. It's something you can actually see and say, oh, okay, that person is suffering through something and go through that. Right now, yeah, my characters are, you know, I would say, yeah, they are damaged individuals. They are like people who are going through some sort of mental trauma or mental illness, or but the whole point of it is that they are working on it, or they are actually talking about it, or it's actually established at this point. Like, so trauma and mental health has always been big to me, numero uno. It's something that a lot of Black families never really talked about until just now. So I feel like it's something we always, it would be great to, you know, go more into. One of my characters in general just so happens to be unknowingly the most powerful superhuman in the world, but she doesn't know it because she's still more in her head. She has borderline personality disorder, and I feel like anything you tend to add in that person, like to have a superpower or something, there should be a reflection or almost like an analogy or a simile to, you know, what they're going through or what their journey is. This person just so happens telekinesis. She has borderline personality disorder, so she has a tendency wanting to control things. But yeah, no, I've always been big on, you know, mental health.
It's interesting you made a note on like trying to tie the.
No, you can finish up.
Like you tried to make a note on tying the power to like the person's like mindset, because I've actually enjoyed seeing like I can't remember what series it was, where people were, I think it wasn't even a series, I think it was just like something people were mentioning or like talking about writing, like someone who has like fiery attitude and they end up with like ice powers. Like something that completely contrasts or juxtaposes that. Like I like that idea as well. Like I do like the idea of playing off their mindset because it does tie into their personality. But the idea of like mixing it up too, like, you know, like I'm afraid of heights, but now I suddenly just fly on a whim every time I get anxious, and it's like that would be hilarious. Like granted, like it might not be like planned, but maybe if they mentioned to make it work for them, and that becomes their story.
Right.
Crafting characters, how important is the name? When you craft characters, how important is the name? And how do you decide how to name a character? I mean, do you look for words that have something to do with who that character is, or are they just names?
I have a rather goofy answer for that. So, for my Tyler the Creator comic, the whole comic is based on the fact that Tyler lives in a world he created. Like, he just happened on a whim to make it, and so he lives there. And through, I don't know if you listen to the Goblin track, but he has, like, he kind of has a conflict with himself. And so, in the comic, he ends up creating an alter ego that starts roaming around in his world. And I was like, oh, well, how do I create an alter ego for Tyler? I just scrambled the letters in his name around, and I called him Lighter the Destroyer. So it's L-Y the Destroyer. Like, right. So that's how I came up with my name.
Yours is way more interesting.
I love that.
I follow the Quentin Tarantino route when it comes to, especially when it comes to names or just characters in general, where in my head, first off, they kind of tell me, I know it's weird to say, but it's like they tell me what their names are. The way his style goes and the way I do everything is imagine them sitting down, having dinner, like each character, and just having to talk. That's how you get the personality, quirks, and by the end of it, they all ask each other names, and it just kind of just comes to me. Okay, my characters now, the name's Nina. All right, the name's Nina.
I think for me, when I create a character, I mean, I guess it's on more the route of it, the combination of it speaks to me, and I just pick a cool sounding name sometimes. Some characters, I just like, that's a cool name. That fits that character. This is
It's sometimes it's really
that's really
cool.
that's
That's
cool.
cool.
That's
I
badass.
mean,
Sometimes I do but then it's also sometimes I might pick a name that kind of like my character Davina, which is more based off of Scottish, more Irish kind of characters and culture. And so, I would look up maybe names similar to that culture and names from that culture in history, and I landed on Davina, and it was kind of a representation of the culture that it comes from. And sometimes that's how I write a character, but sometimes it can just be a beer. And what does that mean?
I actually have a question for you then, for all of you then. It was asking, where are black characters? How do you feel as a black writer writing someone else How do you feel about that? And I actually agree with the background is like using your work. What are you talking about? Right. Have you gone through that route yourself? Like, okay. Yeah. This is what it looks like. Okay.
I was just gonna say, well, for the name one, I just picked like the personality kind of tells me their name. Like it kind of all happens at the same time, but I feel like someone can look like their name and like they can act like. I feel like you can categorize like different names with like personalities. I don't know, maybe that's like psychotic, but I kind of do that. But as far as what you said, wait, what was your question again?
Wait, other characters outside of your own culture. How do you approach it? Yeah.
So for me, I kind of like took the easy way out. And I kind of avoided it because I didn't want to mess anything up. So I was just like,
from the 90s.
I was like, no, like I was literally like, he just looks Asian. Like I was like, I don't know. No, but like, it's a different world. Like it's not Earth. So for my case, it's not like race exists. Like race, first of all, is a construct anyway. But like, it's not like a race exists. It's more so like this is their features. Like this is the way they look. Like it's just. So I drew from different cultures though. Like when creating the world, and the setting, but it's not like a character is going to deal with racism based on the color of their skin. It's more so about like the different types of like race, like human race, or like that kind of. That's what I did. So I went kind of like utopian route. But for you guys, what did you guys?
I mean, I was gonna say, I like history. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll look up if like I'm inspired by some of the aesthetics of a certain culture, just like their clothes, I'll put that into the design of a specific culture. Maybe even the architecture of like the world, like different cities. I'll take inspiration from different real life cities with ancient cities and build that into the world and develop. And it creates a more unique world when you do that. Taking inspiration, something that feels like the world's not the same, but it feels like we went to a different place, if that makes sense. And the people are wearing different clothes now. But like I said, I do a lot of history. My story takes place in a more ancient fantasy type of setting, so a lot more focus on history. I may take inspiration from real life historical figures and kind of base my characters around what, not only just that character, but what they did, how would they act, what society they would come from. And I guess really to answer your question, because you said how you feel about Black people creating, I think, I think you should be able to create any character that you want. As a Black creator. I don't think that you should, if you're a Black creator, you're forced to create some Black character. If a character speaks and resonates to you, whether they be Asian, white, Black, Latino, whatever the case may be, like you said though, make sure you do your research, make sure you understand that culture. But as long as you do that, I think
you can make whatever character you want.
I agree. I think that's why I'm agreeing more and more with like in the back said.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to doing more and more homework.
Mm-hmm.
Not a thing for the early 2000s. So I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting here listening to all this, and Nightosco basically is not just about culture. It's not about how to be that person as you write as a white writer or the Hawaiian poet, but also how is it to be gay, lesbian, or having a borderline personality disorder or mental illness. So it's very easy. There's a lot of things you see everywhere, and I think this is basically like I'm basically like, oh my god, what a caricature of what we call this. What you should really talk with people what they know about it. It's more the same thing. So I think you can't really write if you don't know mental illness in really in depth because you experience yourself. You really have to talk to people. Before you portray it, it's like because if you compare caricature and then the compare is stigmatizing for people that are basically what it is, and then it becomes part of the narrative that basically people with mental illness, for example, struggle with. And so forth, and especially, and so because I work as a therapist, especially thinking about it, that we start to realize that a lot of what in the past was considered person disorders, multiple personality disorder, is renamed to dissociative identity disorder because it's trauma-based. Bipolar, there's a whole paradigm shift happening from all these disorders to that you basically do with the rest of your life to recognizing a lot of them have a trauma base and that you actually can see. And that is a shift that is happening. It's a big paradigm shift happening. And when you start writing over it, mental illness, the same happens already for some time with LGBTQ. When I grew up, you have lesbians and gay. And homosexual men. Bisexual didn't exist. Some genders were basically known. Gender queer was not there. There's a whole dynamic that has happened there. And now it's almost like I'm kind of almost to the point where it's like there's so many gender queer and I don't know what to believe in. I'm transgender myself. So it's like you don't know what's going on there before. And it's basically the same thing with the culture. And then even it's further back. It's not so in America and in the US you have basically kind of a black culture, but really it's not. There's a lot. You come on. There's so many different places where people come from. Same like there's not a white culture. Irish culture, Norwegian culture, Dutch culture, German culture, French culture. And the same happens also within in any other group of people.
Right. I agree with that. We're definitely in the era of we are capable of shutting our mouths and listening to what others I say to understand, because the writing does come down ultimately empathy and actually listening to what that person, taking yourself out of it, actually listening to what that person is trying to say. I agree with everything you're saying.
I was just saying that people are a spectrum, like not even just regional culture, sexuality, but you also, like, one thing that just baffles me, like, I mean, if you're in America, like, I can't even fathom what the 60s were like anywhere outside of America, because like, we all have an idea of what the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s were. Like, there's like this weird whole style profile, but like, if you told me the 60s in India, I have no mental image. I can't, like, were people like hippie, like I can't, like, you can't match the two. Clearly, there were different cultural influences, and so you have all these different facets of people that build them, and then you have emotional, like, profiles, you have physical profiles. Like, there's so much that builds a person, and that's what's so interesting about building a character profile, because while culture does have a huge influence on the character you're building, it only matters if it pertains to your story. You have to figure out how they fit in or where they're coming from. Or, like, so while research is great, it's only a part of it. Like so much of your character design and development is your influence, how you see them, how you want to build that world. Because if you try and talk about race issues, like say something from your book, and you try to put them in her story, it's not going to match. It's not going to work because they're all going to be like, okay, why do you have this issue with this person? It's like, well, they're black, or they're this, they're that, and then you have all these different array of colored elves. Just look at them like, okay, and you're still a human. Okay, like, and then that's where the issues come in. Like, there's a whole different spectrum, and that's, you have to kind of bring it down to how much of this matters to my story, and then from there you build and you create, and that's the fun part about building the character. You can make it as expansive or as minimal as you like. Just know that because you can, doesn't always mean you should. Like, there are consequences to whatever choices you make. Freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequence.
I think that's also, I guess that's a good point. I guess when you talked about sort of the spectrum of stories you can tell. You know, sometimes, you know, some stories that some of those, none of those topics. It can be as simple as you walk down the street, you trip, the end. You know, and that's the story. And I think that, but if you're gonna do that, do the research. And even then, still, in stories like that, those kind of influences in your characters, why they're here, why this is happening to them, all kind of accumulates. Even if it's a metaphor, even if it's a whole different race of alien people, it still will, you need to bring it back to reality, because that's where you're bringing it from. That's what makes the character human.
I think my issue, I don't want to say it's an issue, but I think the danger is when people focus on just simply doing the work, is that they forget about the character itself. Say for instance, like, we are just now starting to get, like, you know, shows and movies that actually start talking about things that, you know, happened in the past that I didn't even realize. Like, a lot of people didn't know about Black Wall Street. A lot of people did not know that happened until the Watchmen show came out. There's like, that actually happened? Yes. A lot of people still don't know that. Atlanta had almost the same thing. You know, Rosewood. And people can do that work. They can do the homework and see how it happens. Like, but they can get so focused on trying to get that right, they forget about the character themselves, right? You know, what they're going through, what they're feeling, you know, how they're responding to it, right? What's their mentality as it's going through it. And you're looking good, right? Oh, okay, this person is distraught because this is happening, but they aren't really good at the almost like the nuance building to it. How was it before it started happening? How they responded, right? The escalation, pretty much, mentally until it actually happens. I'm not sure if I'm making a lot of sense here, but I feel like a lot of nuances kind of miss when people get so obsessed with, you know, the action itself that's taking place. You know, all right, this massacre happened. These people have this. So this person is so disturbed by it. Okay, it feels awfully kind of shallow. I mean, we've seen movies and read comics, we even watched TV shows that we could watch. It's like, yeah, it happened, but I don't feel anything. Or, you know, this is happening, but I don't know this person. I mean, I don't know what exactly it's going through. Everything is so flat. So I feel like that 3D nuance tends to miss. You know, people are so obsessed with trying to get that right.
Yeah, like the characters have to be relatable. Like, I think that's which you were kind of touching on.
Yeah.
Like, someone has to be able to resonate with them for you to actually care about them.
Right.
Like,
And I think that's why I feel like back in the day, a lot of, because I do agree with you that, you know, a lot of, you know, writers could have written a lot of Black protagonists in the day. Just a lot of them didn't really understand this. Maybe, you know, I feel about, you know, maybe not in this exact situation, but I can understand, you know, I've been angry. I've been, you know, I understand being fucked up or screwed over, you know. Take themselves out of their own shoes, put themselves there.
Yeah.
I have a good question. So when you guys go through the processes of, like, just anything you get like the urge to it, do do you guys kind of start with the character, and do you start with the world building? Because I know, I feel like sometimes I get caught up in like, this seems like a really cool, interesting universe that I want to explore, and then I kind of have like a character. Or do you have like a person or a thing or an idea or a story come into your mind, and then you world build around it?
It's always been character for me. Stories never really caught my attention. It's always been character. It's, put them in a situation and I build the world around it.
I think same. Yes and no. I mean, for me, because the story that I created, it came from a dream that I had, and it was about this person. They got attacked in the middle of the night by these monsters, and they were like trying to escape the house or something. And then the dream ended there. And then like I had this dream reoccurring, and I was like, that seems like a good in medium res, like that seems like a story. And then then who's being attacked? Why are they being attacked? And then I sketch out, and then that comes into character design. Sort of, I just sketched out the characters, and I was like, this one resonates. Okay, this is her name. What is she doing? Why is she doing this? What's the world? And then why are these demons attacking her? Are they demons? Are they unmerciful? And it builds upon itself, and then it becomes, you start from this one scenario, at least that's how I did it, and just spiral, ask yourself more and more questions until eventually you create an entire world. That's at least my process when I'm writing a story.
I haven't done too many world building or story making, but I feel like it'd be pretty interesting to create a world and then just design characters based off that, like what's happening in this world and how are these few characters going to interact and deal with these problems in this world. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it could be a mixture of different things. It doesn't have to be that one specific thing, but I see definitely how, like, if you build off a character first, I see how it would be easier for someone to do that than just make the world first.
Right. I'm just saying, like, that's a good point, because it depends on what type of story. Are you more character driven? If that's the case, then the world doesn't matter. It can get nowhere. There are plenty of stories where it's just 2-3 characters in one room for the whole entire story, but it's character driven, so it doesn't really matter what is happening. Some of it's more so based in the world.
Right.
It's the characters. The world is bigger than the characters themselves. So it really just depends on how you want to write it. But again,
I argue character is what drives story.
Right.
I mean, when we go into a movie or we're reading anything, it's most of the time, sometimes a multi-narrative story, those always confuse the hell out of me. But we usually focus on one individual, what they're going through, what their story is, what their need, what their want is, what their trials and tribulations are, point A to point B. Point B, they have to change. So I feel like the moment you build that out, you're able to expand the world better. I don't know about you guys, I've always had trouble with, there was a time where I was like, oh yeah, just create this entire world, then add this person in. I'm building that character based off the entire world when I should be building the world over that character, because it is ultimately about that character, not the world itself. There are definitely stories, great stories, where it's about the world within itself, but it's always that one person who is that, I wouldn't say I guess the figurehead, of the world itself. Like, you can talk about the world, but it has to be focused within that person.
Right.
I guess I did it backwards then, because
there's no wrong way. Right. It's good. Yeah.
Because for me, I started building the world first, actually, and I'm like a very visual person, so I went on Pinterest and there's a lot of like really inspirational like content on there that you can find, and so I just started building boards, and like I built like these little places inside this world, and then I set up the conflicts first, and then I was like, okay, who's gonna like mess this up? Like who's gonna break this up? And then I was like, well, I'm coming from a Black woman's perspective. I want it to be a Black woman. I was like, okay, so then I started fleshing out her character, Mazira, And then I fleshed out, okay, who are these people, who are these deuter antagonists? No, that's not deuter agonists. It's the protagonist, like second companion person. I keep messing up the term, but
I don't even know the term.
The side character.
the side characters,
Yeah.
like, and so I started kind of building it from there. I'm like, okay, so I wanted there to be like politics too. Like, I wanted there to be like this messed up like technocracy and like this government like system. So I sort of built the conflict first, and then kind of set the characters like as like a board game or something, like some sort of chessboard, or like however you want to visualize it in front of you. So yeah, that's how I kind of set it up, like as the characters as players. That's how I visualize it.
You can do either or. Like, for example, the Tyler the Creator comic, obviously he created the world, so it literally stems from him. But like on the spectrum of building the world first, like my idea for another comic was just mushrooms. It's like, okay, well, what do mushrooms do? Okay, there's 1,000 mushrooms. I'll do my research. Okay, this one guy has blood for some reason. That's kind of weird. Let's do that. There's a whole different breed of mushrooms called slime molds. Okay, what if that's a different race? And these, and you kind of slowly start breaking down the categories of who the people are going to be in these worlds. And next thing you know, you're like, okay, now to have groups of people, who's going to be the individual? Like, who's the focal point of this one? Like, of this world, where do I want the story to be? And because you've built it from a world perspective instead of a single individual, it makes it easier to change the story's point, or you can build the world more by telling the story from different perspectives. Rather than focusing on one individual, now you have eyes all over the world. And you can say, okay, well, this is the story of this individual, this is the story of that individual, and you can kind of get a bigger cover of the world. And there are benefits and, I guess, faults to doing it one way or the other. And it really just depends on how you, as a story writer or comic book artist, or just creator in general, that it's all based on how you create.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good point right
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
This is why I actually got the part.
Oh, you do?
Here. But no, thank you so much. I love
Oh.
talking to you guys.
Thank you.
no
We
problem.
need
Thank you so much.
Can I get your Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And just send it to me.
Yeah, I will. And I guess it's like 9. It's past 9.
Yeah, it's past
Oh,
yeah,
it's
it's past
Yeah.
time.
Oh wow, we talking
It's okay. I mean, we basically had
Okay.
Q&A, and we basically talked about everything.
So, if there's any last second questions, we can maybe want to ask Job.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They said Q&As now.